Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down the terrifying and honestly deeply gripping lore of the source material, Shadows of the Crematorium Part 2. Now, if you've been following this phenomenal story, you know the atmosphere is incredibly thick, the stakes are super high, and the mysteries, well, they just keep multiplying. We're going to unpack exactly what happens when the past flat out refuses to stay buried. We've distilled the absolute core of this haunting narrative so you can fully grasp the intricate layers of the story without, getting lost in the dark. So let's get right into the unfinished truth.
Drop right back into the atmosphere with me for a second here. The source material establishes that almost an entire year has passed since the events of the first part. Our main guy, Arnav, has been completely traumatized. I mean, he literally hasn't stepped out alone into the night darkness since. But here's the thing, you just can't outrun the supernatural. The text details that every single year on that exact same date, right at the stroke of midnight, Arnav's mobile phone rings. It's an unknown number. And when he picks up, there is no human voice on the other end, just pure auditory horror. It's the heavy, rhythmic, echoing sound of that old crematorium bell. Dong, dong, dong. It is a brilliant, terrifying way to show the psychological toll this haunting is taking on him.
And then comes the absolute kicker. Right after those echoing bells, this spine-chilling, whispering voice filters through the phone line, delivering this exact quote. "Now know the truth. Listen, this isn't just a cheap jump scare. It's a massive narrative pivot. This chilling whisper acts directly as Arnav's call to adventure. The source shows us that instead of breaking him down, this message actually steals his resolve. It forces him to realize that, hey, this haunting is never going to stop unless he stops running. So he makes the incredibly brave decision to finally turn around and face his deepest fear head-on."
Section 1. The Historical Motive. The Elder's Dark Secret. Before just charging blindly into the dark, Arnav very wisely seeks out the oldest, most knowledgeable person in the village, a man known as Haripada Kaku. The village elder lets out this heavy sigh and reveals a closely guarded secret. Turns out this haunting isn't just random. It all stems from a historical tragedy, specifically a violent crematorium land grab. Years ago, a group of extremely greedy individuals wanted to seize the valuable land right next to the crematorium. And to get it, they didn't just bend the law, they violently murdered innocent people. The absolute most heartbreaking part of all this is that, according to the source, the crime was completely covered up. Justice was literally never served, leaving this dark stain on the history of the village for decades. It's wild because this impartial historical fact suddenly grounds the entire ghost story in real human tragedy and greed.
Moving on to Section 2, The Midnight Return, Facing the Fear.
Hearing about this horrifying injustice obviously makes Arnav shudder, but it also really solidifies his mission. He decides there's only one way forward. He has to return to the very source of his terror, the cursed crematorium itself, and he has to do it at midnight. But he's definitely learned from his past mistakes. This time he is not going in empty-handed. He packs a very specific survival kit. First up, a powerful torch, absolutely essential for piercing that oppressive darkness. Second, a camera, which clearly shows he intends to capture some hard evidence this time around. But the third item, that is the real game changer. It's the priest's holy amulet. He got this from the village priest, and it basically acts as his primary supernatural defense. The crucial takeaway here is that Arnav is officially shifting from a passive victim to an active investigator, fully armed both physically and spiritually for whatever's waiting for him out there.
Section 3. Battle in the Shadows. Unearthing the Past.
The source material sets a deeply chilling scene for us right here. Arnav arrives at the crematorium exactly at midnight, only to find it dead silent. I mean, it's as if time itself has just completely frozen. There's this eerie lack of wind that makes the oppressive stillness feel even heavier. Following a faint light, he suddenly comes face to face with two massive, opposing supernatural forces, and this brilliantly illustrates the central conflict. On one hand, you have the white-clad old woman from the first part, but she tells him straight up she's not there to frighten him. She actively seeks to reveal the truth and actually guide him, pointing her spectral finger toward a specific spot in the dirt. But then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is the entity we're about to meet, the giant dark shadow. This is a violent, aggressive force that exists entirely to protect the historical secret and stop Arnav's investigation dead in its tracks at any cost.
So, following the old woman's guidance, Arnav starts digging. Suddenly, his spade strikes something hard, and he unearths this explosive, undeniable proof. He pulls this rusted iron box straight out of the earth, and inside, old photographs, official government papers, and, most importantly, a handwritten diary. The text reveals that this diary meticulously details absolutely everything about that horrific night. We're talking about who committed the murders, exactly why they did it, and the precise mechanics of how the whole truth was buried. It turns out the ghosts don't just want vengeance. They literally want the historical record set straight.
But man, the moment this truth hits the night air, all hell breaks loose. The source describes a sudden, incredibly violent storm just erupting out of nowhere. The trees start swinging violently in unison, and Arnav can feel the heavy gaze of countless invisible eyes right on him. Then, manifesting entirely out of thick black smoke, this giant, terrifying dark shadow towers right over him. With a deep, earth-shaking roar, it screams out a single demand: leave that box and go. The dark shadow of the murderer's guilt has quite literally taken physical form to protect its horrific legacy.
At this point, Arnav is shaking with absolute terror, which, let's be real, who wouldn't be? But he doesn't drop the box. Instead, he clutches that rusted metal tightly and begins to pray with just intense desperation. And this triggers the absolute climax of the scene. Remember that holy amulet he got from the priest, that third crucial item in his survival kit? It suddenly activates. It begins to emit this blinding radiant light. The text vividly describes how the sudden flash of holy light causes the black shadow to scream in pure agony before it slowly dissolves and vanishes completely into the darkness.
Section 4. A curse finally broken. The false peace.
Just as quickly as it started, the storm abruptly ends. The white-clad woman looks at Arnav with this gentle smile, declares that the decades-old curse has finally been broken, and simply fades upward into the night sky. The crematorium becomes perfectly calm again, and honestly, it feels like this massive, hard-won victory. The pacing of the story really slows down here, giving us this deep sense of safety and closure. The next morning, Arnav acts as a totally responsible citizen and immediately hands the rusted box, along with all its explosive contents, straight over to the local police. Fast forward a few months later, and the police investigation blows the lid completely off the historic crimes, finally revealing the grim truth to the entire village for the very first time. Bringing us right up to the present day, the narrative tells us that those haunting sounds at the crematorium bell, they have ceased completely.
So the village people collectively breathe a massive sigh of relief. They firmly believe the unquiet dead are finally at rest. But let's just pause our analysis for a second here. Really think about it. Did the restless spirits finally find peace? Consider everything we've uncovered so far. The story sets you up so perfectly to believe that justice has neatly tied up all the loose ends. But as you know, in an explainer of a mystery this incredibly dark, a neat, tidy ending is usually a trap.
Which brings us to Section 5. The final terrifying twist. The unfinished truth.
Without warning, the source entirely shatters our false sense of peace. Get this. Arnav wakes up in the middle of the night, looks across his pitch-dark room, and his blood runs completely cold. Sitting right there on his table is the exact same rusted iron box. No way, right? The box he physically handed to the police months ago has mysteriously found its way back into his home, and it creaks open completely on its own. I gotta say, this is one of the most gripping cliffhangers I've seen in a long while. Because inside that mysteriously returned box, all the old evidence is gone. Instead, sitting right there is a single piece of pitch-black paper with a terrifying message scrawled in blood-red letters. It reads, "Not over. One person left." The structural brilliance here is just off the charts. It reveals that the historical justice was actually incomplete. There is a survivor of that dark conspiracy, or maybe a descendant who still needs to face their reckoning. And just as Arnav reads this chilling note, the lights in his room abruptly cut out.
Plunged into total darkness, that familiar, bone-chilling voice from the midnight phone calls echoes right there in his bedroom, delivering this one final promise. In Part 3, the final door of truth will open,
And wow, that is exactly where the source material leaves us, hanging by a literal thread. What an absolutely incredible way to structure a narrative, using the cozy illusion of a solved mystery to set up an even higher stakes confrontation. It leaves you desperately wanting to know who that last person is and what horrors actually lie behind that final door. So what did you think of Arnav's strategy at the crematorium? Let that final provocative thought sit with you for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the dark today, and until next time, keep seeking the truth.